evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. It's Apple here, and we have choices. We have choices on WSTX AM 970, or rather 970 AM on your dial. A little bit of a late start. We were still expecting some of the crew to get here, and I think we may have Shanice online streaming live with us, and of course, we have here with us this evening thus far, M Love.
It's your girl M Love. Good night, everybody. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Friday.
And of course, Shanice, are you with us? Hello?
Oh, the volume.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Are you okay now?
Yeah, we're good now.
You with us, Shanice?
Hi, good night, everyone.
Yeah, go ahead, Shanice. Say hello to the folks.
Good night, everyone.
Ring you loud and clear. Good night, good night, good night. And good to have you. We were hoping that Anu is going to join us shortly. And Disha said that she had a little setback, so she can't make it this evening. But we're ready to run. We have a lot of things we'd like to touch upon this evening. But before we get there, I think it's important, at least for me, to let folks understand that I believe in a Creator Most High. And with every step I take, with every breath of mine, I want to acknowledge the existence of the Creator Most High and to be thankful for the gift of life. I am thankful for family. I am thankful for good neighbors and good friends and people who have been placed here to be of assistance, to be of a source of encouragement for me as I go through this journey. Because this, to me, is a journey. It's a journey that's going to lead to a destination of some sort. I don't know exactly what the destination is going to be like, but based upon my readings, my research, conversations I've had with others, I believe that, it's either a destination of joy unspeakable and full of glory, or a destination of torment. I don't subscribe to the notion that people will be in a fiery place eternally, suffering day in and day out simply because of their misdeeds here on planet Earth. I believe there'll be some kind of recompense, punishment, but I don't know what it's going to be like. Some say it is eternal separation from the Creator. Some say it's eternal destruction. But I believe eternity is simply the absence of past and future. When you're in eternity, you're in the moment. There's no past and there's no future. You're just in the moment, present. And so, as far as I see it, those of us who live lives that are righteous, lives that are holy, if I may use that expression. And of course, I don't think anybody is completely holy, but at least we aspire to be holy. We aspire to be upright in our dealings with each other. We try our best to reverence the Creator Most High, and I think if everything is in order, and we will reach that point where we experience an existence of joy which is beyond all that we can imagine. The Bible says it's joy unspeakable and full of glory. I have seen glimpses of that on my present walk here on this earth. There are moments of intense joy that I experience every now and again, notwithstanding the difficulties, the trials, the supposed tribulations that I might go through. And so I believe in a Creator Most High, and I believe that I have a responsibility to live a life which is upright, a life which, as much as possible, doesn't consist of sinful engagements, if I may say that. And what is sin? We're told that it is transgression of God's law, and we understand that one of the fundamental sets of law that we have is the Ten Commandments. So again, I just wanted to state that publicly. Not that I'm not goody goody two shoes. I'm not pretending to be so upright and righteous. I've made my mistakes in life. I acknowledge mistakes that I've made. I try my best as I continue on this journey to be circumspect in my dealings, to try my best not to dishonor people, not to find myself in an adversarial relationship with people. I try to exercise love as much as I can. I try to exercise understanding and compassion. I do my best to be that way. That doesn't mean that I don't fall short. I think I do fall short at times. And if I have done somebody wrong, I'm not too big to tell the person that I'm sorry. I did you wrong. That's my general approach to life, and we can spread that into some of what we'll be discussing this evening. What's your take on that, Mandy?
I feel the same sentiments as well. I try for the most part to be good, but I ain't gonna act like I'm the perfect person who don't be a little slip of the tongue and say something bad sometimes. I don't mean harm, but it happens. I'm only human.
Shanice, what's your take?
I'm the same thing. I mean, I'm not a perfect person. I'm far from perfect, but I just try to be the best version of myself that I can be.
All right, and I think we've got to be honest with ourselves, especially when we look at situations in life, whether it is on a regional basis, on an international level. No matter how we look at it, we have to consider ourselves before we criticize, before we judge other people. I think it would behoove all of us to take an approach of humility when we criticize, when we judge, when we seek to admonish or correct individuals. And so the first thing I want us to look at is that we have a report making the rounds locally here in the territory where a young man has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Actually, two of them were sentenced. One guy was given 68 months and the other one 5 years in prison for getting involved in some embezzlement, fraudulent activity. The young man in particular, based on what I know about him, he's a guy who had much promise, a guy who has done relatively well until he found himself in that situation. And as I read some of the comments that people had concerning him, because he served in a top position in the government here in the Virgin Islands. He served as a commissioner, and he got caught up in a situation. And I have heard some people just, outright feel that he deserved what he got. He did the crime, and he needs to do the time. People who are in no shape, form, or manner sympathetic. And I wonder to what extent those persons who take that position, that they're straight and narrow in their approach to life, that they've never done anything that's wrong, and they feel justified to take that kind of position towards persons who have come up short, persons who have gone afoul of the law. And I don't know if there is anything I can say to impress upon folks who are hearing me, that we ought to re-examine our approach in terms of how we criticize, how we judge each other. I'm not suggesting that there should be no punishment, but I'm wondering if the punishment
Too
exceeds,
harsh.
if it's a little too harsh. Apparently, we seem to have lost Shanice there. I don't know why. Um,
Oh, there she
okay,
is.
she's back. Yeah, Shanice, I'm saying I don't know if the amount of money involved is $5,000. He received a bribe of $5,000, and he has now been sentenced to 5 years in prison plus 3 years of probation afterwards. I I don't know what's your take on that. If you feel that it's justified to take somebody who's on a very promising track, and because that person made a mistake and got involved in some kind of a bribe that involves $5,000, that person should be sent to prison for a period of 5 years. I don't know what do you think about that, Mandy, Shanice?
I
What's your take?
mean, I don't know if I'm thinking like okay, so he did 5,000, so they just put 5 years on the 5,000. I'm wondering like if he had gotten 10,000, would it have been 10 years on the 10,000? I don't know. I'm not a judge. I don't understand how the judgment goes the laws in terms of how people get confined, punished for money type bribery stuff. But I mean, like, if they already give him 5 years, why he gotta be on a probation of 3 years when he comes out? Why not take away some other things, like put a stop to certain things that he could probably get into after serving that sentence? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like the judgment, the sentences are a bit too harsh for some individuals. This is a very unforgiving community. I want to say that.
An unforgiving world, not just the community.
Well, yes, that.
Mhm.
People act like their closets are very squeaky clean and they don't have anything they have done in their past that was not right.
Shanice, let me hear you before I bring up a comparison here, if I may. Go ahead, Shanice.
So, of course, this is an unfortunate situation, but to be honest, we don't know if this is the first time that he's done it or this is the first time that he has been caught. At the end of the day, the law is the law. That's, one of the reasons why I try to do what I'm supposed to do because, they might want to make an example out of that person for committing
Hmm.
a crime.
Hmm.
And um, I don't know how it is in St. Croix as far as going to jail, but usually when you do five, when they give you a sentence, you only serve half of it. And so that could be the reason why he possibly has 3 years of probation, meaning he will serve the remainder of his 5 years on probation instead of being in jail for it.
Hmm. You're saying that if somebody is sentenced to 4 years in prison, they actually spend about 2 years in prison. Is that what you're saying on the
So it
minimum?
depends. It depends on where it is. In certain counties, yes, that's how it
Hmm.
is. It's a 2 for 1. So you don't serve the whole sentence, you just serve half of it.
Okay, well, let me ask you both something here. When you think of the charges that were leveled against Sean Diddy Combs, and he got 4 years, just about 4 years to serve in prison, on a charge of embezzlement of public funds, where one gets 5 years to serve in prison. Which of these two, when you consider what Diddy was accused of as opposed to what this guy was accused of, which of the two crimes seem to be more egregious, if I may?
Definitely Diddy.
I was gonna say, I'm not sure exactly what were the charges Diddy was filed against. I know a lot of things were brought to light, but he didn't serve. They didn't charge him on many of those things that came out.
Hmm.
So that could play a big part in the reason why he got so little amount of years.
Hmm. I think he was charged with a crime of transporting individuals across state lines for prostitution,
Hmm,
sex trafficking.
crazy.
So that's pretty serious. And then, of course, during the course of the trial, we saw all the allegations that came up against him. But he was given a 4-year sentence compared to this guy. I personally, I think that, this sentence here is excessive. 5 years for embezzlement of $5,000. I disagree with that. I don't even think that this is going to send the message that perhaps prosecutors and the judge feel needs to be sent across the spectrum. I don't think it really, scores that point, if I may. I don't think that that will impact the young man in the sense of trying to bring about a reformed individual. That lengthy sentence in and of itself may not achieve that goal. I think the mere fact that he has been charged, he's been discovered engaging in something which isn't right, considering the position that he held and seeing where he now stands, that's enough to have him, engaging in deep introspection, to have deep retrospect, as a matter of fact, and to conclude that, wow, I made a serious mistake, and see where it has gotten me. Even if he was given a sentence of a year or two, I think he would have felt the same way. So that's my take, and for anybody out there who's connected to us and who wants to share your position on that, you can share with us. Just comment on Facebook if you want to, or you can give us a call at 340-773-0390 or 773-0490, and we'd be glad to hear from you. I don't know if you guys have any further comment on that before I switch to the next thing I want to touch upon. And again, it is something that deals with us here in the region. But any further comments on what we just discussed, Shanice?
I didn't
All right.
really read the case,
All right.
but I'm saying that briefly, the prosecutors had originally recommended 12 years.
12 years.
Wow.
Yes. Which is just crazy as far
Wow.
as I'm concerned.
Wow.
But anyway, the other thing I want to touch upon is in terms of what has been happening here in the Caribbean area. The president, I don't know if any of you guys saw the list of countries that the president put a pause on them as far as migration is concerned, as far as getting permanent resident visas to come to the United States. There are some 75 countries that have been so categorized, so restricted. Those countries include St. Lucia, Dominica, Barbados, Grenada, several others. A large number of them are African countries, some Asian, Arab countries, and perhaps a couple of them in Eastern Europe. You all heard the countries I've mentioned? Caribbean countries, African countries, some countries in Asia, a couple of them maybe in Eastern Europe. And of those exempted in the Caribbean area, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Bermuda. I want you all to think of demographics. And I would like to hear what's your take when you look at geopolitics, when you look at who all is involved. What do you think of the action of the president? What's your take on it? Not to negatively criticize the president, because he has his wisdom, he has his advisors, and Certainly, he has his reasons why he has so moved. But what is, on the outside watching it, let's be truthful. What's your take on that?
So you said exempt is Trinidad, Guyana, and where? What was the next place?
Bermuda.
But they always say Guyana ain't really in Guyana. They always say not really in the Caribbean. They're on the border. They're in the South America basin.
But if okay, so if it is in Guyana is a part of South America.
Right.
But if that's the case, what about all the other countries in America, in South America, that have been included in that ban or that pause?
I don't know what to say right now because of this guy. Go ahead, Shani.
Janice, let me hear what's your take before I share my position.
So pretty much all countries that have people of African descent with curly hair, because let's just face it, a lot of people know a lot of people from Trinidad and Guyana. They're the reason why when they were discovered, Christopher Columbus, so to speak, thought they were Indian. That's why,
Right.
But he doesn't want anyone that has curly hair, anyone that resembles um, Africans to come into the United States.
That's crazy.
Well, here is my take on that, and let me just share my take. Let's take Bermuda. Bermuda is a British protectorate, if I may use that word. Bermuda is strongly or deeply British. Bermuda has been so much British that Bermuda has appeared to be separate from the rest of the British or formerly British Caribbean islands. Even though you've had nurses and certain professionals moving from some of the Caribbean islands and taking up residence in Bermuda under some contractual terms where they came in to work, whether as police officers or as nurses, doctors, etc. Bermuda has had some restriction as far as migration is concerned. Migration of folks coming from the Caribbean islands and moving to Bermuda. Bermuda has close proximity to mainland America. And so even though you have a significant number of colored people residing in Bermuda, you have a significant number of white people who reside in Bermuda as well. And for all practical purposes, Bermuda is British. And America has this strong relationship, this strong tie with Britain. So one can understand why Bermuda gets a pass.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Trinidad and Tobago, one, they have cooperated quite a bit with the United States of America, especially in light of the recent actions, U.S. action in Venezuela. Trinidad and Tobago worked like hand in glove with the United States of America. And the second point is that Trinidad and Tobago has oil reserves.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Guyana, massive oil deposits have been discovered in Guyana.
Yeah.
And you actually right now have American companies engaged in, oil exploration in the country Guyana. So you look at that and you can see reasons for that exemption. And having touched upon the exemptions, I want us to look at, how should I put it, the ethnicity of those countries that have where that pause have been placed. And sadly, they are people of color by and large, as you pointed out, Shanice. They are people of color. And so most of us will take it for granted. We won't delve deep to touch upon these things, to bring out those observations. But I feel compelled as an African descendant to speak truth and to share my observations with others concerned. So and so I wanted to mention that. And whilst I have mentioned that, I want to just say something so that African descendants and Africans watching this program, listening to this program, can understand our position in the world today, how we are seen, and Africans are very intelligent people, very talented people. Africans have been marginalized to a large extent through colonialism and other acts that, you know, have been perpetrated on the continent and its people by other groups. But if you, for those of you who may not, I'm a person, I read the Bible, and in Deuteronomy chapter 28, there is a curse which is foretold to come upon the children of the Most High because of disobedience. And that curse says that they would be taken in ships into Egypt to be sold as slaves. And Egypt, of course, here, I forget the expression we use, but it's not Egypt as Egypt in Africa, but Egypt as being a people outside of the commonwealth of the Creator Most High. And so there is only one set of people in the world who fit the description of the prophecy, which brings a consequence, a curse on a people for being disobedient. There is only one set of people in the world who fit that mold, and it is Africans. It is African people. And so I want to share with those who are listening and those who are viewing that we are a special people, we are a peculiar people, we are talented, we are intelligent, and I want to dare say that we are a chosen people. But for some reason, we forgot who chose us. And we've gone astray and we found ourselves in this predicament in which we are today. And I hope Africans who are listening to me on this program, those of us who have not paused to consider some of the things that I have shared this evening, we need to check ourselves. The way that we live life, our practices, the things that we get into that aren't exactly wholesome. Not just the fact that even in the Caribbean islands, we are killing each other, males, black males killing each other in all of the Caribbean islands. I think we've had about, about 6 murders on the island of St. Lucia since this year got moving. And here in the Virgin Islands, we've had several. Just recently, we had 3 individuals were found shot in the head at one of the dump sites here on the island. So we're plagued with violence in the Caribbean area, largely on islands or in island nations populated by Africans or African descendants. And so I appeal to all African people, whether on the mother continent Africa or in the diaspora, as we put it, to check ourselves and to make the necessary changes and adjustments in terms of our mindset and in terms of our behavior, in terms of how we deal with each other. We're not being very kind, compassionate, and loving in terms of how we deal with each other. We like to build up walls of separation. We like to find ourselves different from others like us on the basis of all kinds of ridiculous items or elements. And so I'm saying we need to stop that. And that's my message. That's my message to all Africans and African descendants in the diaspora and on the mainland Africa. Now, this evening we really want to get into discussing some matters concerning the hospital on the island of St. Croix, the Wang F. Louis Hospital, some horror stories that have come from the hospital. I want us to get into that. Not with a view towards condemning anyone or casting blame on any individual, but I want us to look at, the incidents I'm going to share with you that I have come to learn in terms of, things that just went wrong at the hospital, and to try and find out what might have led to those things. And before we even get there, the governor of the Virgin Islands has said that he wants to have this documentary to showcase his legacy. And today, in the local print media, there is a listing of several things that he said that he would have corrected, made better. And one of them is number 8 listed there. They've just listed 9 of them in this paper, but number 8 says, improve the quality of healthcare in the territory. That's according to the governor's platform. He says we must re-examine the business model of the hospital, how to improve. Sorry, let me strike that. Let me go again. We must re-examine the business model of the hospital system in the territory and determine how to improve the quality of service offered. A comprehensive health needs analysis for the Virgin Islands must be conducted, and we should aspire to be known for excellence in the treatment of those ailments that are most prevalent in our community. That's according to the governor. And so with that as a backdrop, I want us to look at some of what has transpired in the territory. At the Wang F. Louis Hospital. And I want to, whilst I can simply present that off the top of my head, I want to be on point, and I want to cover all bases when I present that. So let me share with you. Number 1, a resident of a West End community experienced chest pains, and that's recently, within the last year. He asked his wife to drive him to the hospital. He was able to walk to the car and to walk from his car to the emergency room. There was a physician present on location, but according to reports, necessary equipment was unavailable to carry out the intervention. The patient suffered a heart attack and died in the hands of the attending physician. And I got that from family members. Second situation, an individual experiencing severe pain due to a kidney stone apparently stuck in the urinary tract went to the emergency room, where again, due to lack of needed equipment, surgery was not an option. A catheter was inserted, and the patient, while still in much pain, was sent home, presumably pending further evaluation and action. A young mother going through a normal pregnancy reported to the hospital in order to give birth. Somehow, she ended up in intensive care, and her newborn baby ended up with complications requiring a specialist to fly in from St. Thomas to provide care. Didn't have a specialist on hand at the hospital. A young woman shared with me that she went to the hospital for a blood transfusion, whereupon the attending physician informed her that there was good news and bad news. When asked what was the bad news, she was told that an important piece of equipment to carry out the procedure is missing. So the procedure could not be carried out. Finally, it seems almost routine that gunshot and major accident victims have to be airlifted out of St. Croix for treatment, whether to Puerto Rico or the mainland. And having presented these scenarios, I want to again mention for everybody listening, viewing, to hear this here, that one of the governor's main thrusts, as far as his platform is concerned, is to improve the quality of healthcare in the territory. He has 1 year left to get that done. And here is what he said. He said, we must re-examine the business model of the hospital system in the territory. And I like what he says, the business model must be re-examined and determine how to improve the quality of services offered. A comprehensive health needs analysis. Hear this again. Health needs analysis for the Virgin Islands must be conducted, and we should aspire to be known for excellence in the treatment of those ailments that are most prevalent in our community. And the most prevalent in our community today are heart disease, to include hypertension and kidney failure, which goes beyond just failing kidneys, but it has to do with diabetes and other, compromised blood system in individuals. And so that's where we find ourselves today. And I thought that it would be good for us to examine the situation at the Wang F. Louis Hospital. It's not to indict anybody, such as rank and file staff at the hospital. No, I think they're very professional. The nurses I've had to deal with at the hospital, whenever I took family members to the hospital, the nurses were very professional, very sympathetic in their dealings. Hospital personnel generally of that, disposition. But things somehow fall through the cracks. There are reports of failures, shortcomings at the hospital. And so my question is, the hospital is a semi-autonomous agency of the government. What does that mean? Are the failures and shortcomings at the St. Croix Hospital unique to us, or is that generally characteristic of other hospitals? And Shanice, you can share that with us because you're on the mainland. You can share a perspective from what you've observed, what you know of, as far as hospitals on the mainland, especially in the state of Georgia, specifically in the area of Atlanta is concerned. Are the failures and shortcomings at the St. Croix Hospital unique to us, or is that generally characteristic of smaller hospitals in other jurisdictions? What is the role of elected officials relative to the operation of the hospital? And are you of the opinion that elected officials have failed us? Complaints about the hospital are not new. As a matter of fact, we have had excellent native-born physicians quit and relocate to the mainland because of frustration and disappointment with hospital administration and operation. How can we provide conditions to encourage our qualified sons and daughters to return home to provide professional services, not only at the hospital, but also in other areas. And some of you might have other unacceptable conditions or situations you have observed at the hospital that you can share with us. So we're open for discussion. Whoever wants to start off.
Are we getting a call or that's
Uh,
it's been lighted for a while, so I don't know.
Let me see. Nope. Hello, caller. Hello. All right. I guess not. And I don't know how to correct that. But anyway, 773-0390 and 773-0490 are the numbers to call. There is something blinking there which may interfere with calls coming in, but give it a shot. Let's see if you can reach us if you would like to share with us on this some important topic where we're looking at operations at the St. Croix hospital that have just gone totally out of whack.
Also, if you're on the Facebook live stream, you can type whatever you would like to say in the chat box and we'll read it out.
All right, Shanice, let me hear you.
All right, so here's the thing. I feel like people should start suing the hospital. Sue them. Medical malpractice. Sue them for lack of equipment. Sue them. They need to be audited, honestly, because where's the money going to? They need to take accountability. Once they start losing money, I bet you they figure out quickly how to fix the situation.
Well,
But people are afraid.
yeah. I first of all, Shanice, it's not easy suing any hospital, and because we are a small community, because we have, how should I put it? We have financial challenges. I would only recommend suing the hospital as a last resort. I don't encourage suing the hospital at you know
We really got one.
at any
If
state of time.
nobody's held accountable, why should they stop doing what they're doing? Obviously it's not working, so some action needs to be taken. When you sue somebody, you don't pay the money up front to the lawyer. The lawyer has to win the case in order for them to get a percentage of the winnings. So
Mhm,
class action lawsuit, start there.
mhm. Well, first of all, let me just say to us here and to those who are listening, um, the hospital is a semi-autonomous agency of the government. What does that mean? The hospital operates according to a structure, a framework that has been set up by the legislature. It is legislative law that has set up the parameters within which the hospital operates, um, so that the hospital is partially independent, but it's not completely independent.
Right.
You know, there is a certain degree of latitude that the hospital has to operate, but the hospital is subject to oversight from the legislature. Um, Annual review of its budget, and it is the legislature that passes a budget for the hospital's operation based upon what is submitted by its governing, how should I put it, its governing board and the executive branch of government, so that the executive branch, which is the governor and his people, they have responsibility. They have to share liability. The legislature likewise has responsibility and has to share liability. The legislature is the one that passed the legislation, drafted the legislation, passed the legislation, which establishes the rules, the parameters whereby the hospital operates,
Okay, so
and also sets the criteria for the appointment of the board members who govern the operations of the hospital.
so in other words, we need to get on the backs of the senators and the governor.
I agree.
That's what we need to
They
put a push.
they have a large role to play in that regard. You know, um, why would you come to a why would someone go to a hospital emergency room in a territory where hypertension is prevalent, in a territory where people suffer in significant numbers from cardiovascular disease, and you're telling me that you don't have necessary equipment at the hospital at that point in time when a patient reports
I mean,
to carry out surgery to deal with the patient situation. What could lead to such a situation?
I just have one question to ask. We are in 2026.
Mhm.
Why do we only have one hospital? I'm trying to understand.
Do we need more than one hospital on the
I
island?
feel so.
An island with 50,000 residents? Do we need a second hospital? I don't know. Shanice, let me hear you.
Will these same politicians, are they visiting the hospital or are they flying out to get treatment when it is their turn?
I This is interesting, and I don't know if people on the island pay attention to that. But most elected officials I have known who had a significant ailment, such as cancer, they traveled to the mainland for services, for healthcare. And I want to repeat that. The majority of elected officials, let me not say the majority, those elected officials I have known who suffered a significant ailment, such as heart failure or cancer, they travel to the mainland for treatment. So, what does that tell you?
It says a lot. They don't need the system, so why fix it?
Not that they don't need the system.
They don't. They're not utilizing it. They're
I
letting
think
other people.
I think it's a case where they don't trust
That's
the
even
system.
worse.
I think it's a case where they don't have confidence in the quality of care being provided locally. And what does that tell you about the mindset? You know, if I am if I am in the business of producing a product, I would make sure that this product is of such high quality that me personally, I would want to have to, to make use of that product. In other words, if I am in the business of manufacturing a piece of equipment that I can use on the farm, why would I leave the equipment that I have actually invented, designed, leave it aside and go and buy one from somebody, purchase one from somebody else, you know, who's in similar business? I would want to make sure that the equipment which I'm producing is of top quality, bar none, so that I don't have to go to someone else, but what I produce, I can use in my area. In other words, I'm saying that our senators, the governor, you know, our these people should make sure that the quality of service we're getting from the hospital is top level, so that they can go to the hospital in absolute confidence, knowing that they're going to have the best of physicians to attend to them. They're going to have quality service that they don't have to run to the mainland to get that. And our people should demand
Mhm.
that our elected officials put in place that kind of operation, that kind of service.
Let me let me just tell you, it's very sad that a lot of folks they actually had to relocate. They had to move off of St. Croix just to get the health care that they need. Actually, you probably didn't even want to leave home. You know, home is where the heart is.
Hmm.
But because of the lack of equipment and probably the physician that they need for a certain sickness or whatever they have,
Hmm.
they have to give home up and live and start a new life in the States. This is sad.
Um, and Shanice, before I comment on what Mandy just said, let me hear what you have to say.
I mean, the situation is unfortunate. And even so, as a physician who went to school to do their best to take care of people, why would I want to work in a hospital that doesn't have equipment and constantly have people die on me, which could be prevented?
Hmm.
So it has to start somewhere. They have to provide the equipment so that people can do their jobs to the best of their abilities.
Hmm. All right, let me just say this here. It was just, when was it? This week,
Mhm.
around the middle of this week, I run into, and I'm discussing these matters here on this program because the very chief executive here has been asking Virgin Islanders who are on the mainland to come home, to render service at home, to help develop and build your territory. And if that's the kind of healthcare we're offering here, why would any young Virgin Islander who has a family on the mainland, has a good job, um, having quality schools for the children to attend, um, myriad sources of entertainment and leisure activities, places for the children to explore on the weekend, why would they want to return to the territory if we're not providing that quality of life for them and their family here at home? So um, these things must be taken into consideration. And it's unfortunate that, this is like an indictment on elected officials, because I know elected officials can do better. Um, I don't know why they've not found themselves in that mindset where they want to focus more on service for people rather than just simply taking care of friends and family and themselves. But I want to mention that this young man, I met him midweek, and when we had a bit of chatting, and he told me that he doesn't live on the island anymore. He had to move to the mainland because he had prostate cancer, and there were better services for him on the mainland. So he moved to the mainland for that purpose, and he eventually chose to remain on the mainland because of the level of healthcare services that he can get on the mainland. And so he resides on the mainland, and he's just here for a vacation right now. And that kind of like, it touched a vein in me, if I may, because I've known of so many cases. Like I said, we've had some top physicians here in the territory. We had one of the best cancer specialists in the territory. Well, he was committed to this place, so he remained with us until the time of his passing. But we had another top cardiologist in the territory, and he became frustrated and disappointed, and he relocated to the mainland, where he's being hailed as one of the best, one of the top doctors in America. And I'm saying that, it is sad that we do that because Shanice, Mandy, those who are viewing, those who are listening, the average salary for a cardiologist on the mainland is about 400, $500,000. That's the average salary. That falls along the same lines from a cancer specialist. It's around the same price range. About their annual salary is about 400, $500,000 annual salary for such a specialty. You know, don't tell me with a budget for a population of 50, well, actually it's not 50, let's say 100,000, because we're talking about St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. And we've got two hospitals really. We've got Schneider Hospital in St. Thomas, St. John district, and you have a Mawang F. Louis Hospital here in St. Croix. But don't tell me that we can't afford, with a budget of in excess of $1 billion for the year, that we cannot afford to have, you know, a couple of cardiologists stationed at our hospital here on St. Croix and over in St. Thomas as well, and that we cannot have a couple of top cancer specialists located in both islands. Now, by the way, let me just mention that we do have a cardiac center on St. Croix. I don't know how well this is manned at the present time. And we do have a cancer center, a cancer treatment center over in St. Thomas. And again, I don't know how well that facility is manned in terms of personnel required, necessary personnel. I don't know. But I'm saying that, you know, our annual budget can take care of that. And there are other things that can be done as far as management and as far as management, as far as how should I put it? Budgeting for these hospitals are concerned. There are lots of steps that can be taken. Right now, we have a significant number of persons who are underinsured, people who work in the private sector, who don't have the kind of insurance that perhaps government employees have on the island. But you know what's a sad thing? Mandy, Shanice, you know what is a sad thing? Many of our government employees who become ill, whether it is with a heart problem, you know, cardiovascular disease, cancer, or what have you, they do not seek treatment in the territory. They fly off island. And you know what that means? The revenues that the hospital could have been getting, that goes to the mainland. So we do have a situation with that. Then there is the case of Medicare and Medicaid, and I'm not too familiar with that because I'm out of government right now. But in terms of compensation from those areas, again, you have a number of persons who choose to go to the mainland. So reimbursement that we could have been getting through Medicare, Medicaid, we're not getting that in the territory. Reimbursement and revenues we could have been getting from insurance companies, you know, not just for the government, but there are others. There are some top employers here who have good insurance programs for their people. But again, the folks are going to the mainland. And unless we can get our act together here locally so that people can develop trust and confidence in our hospital, the personnel who man the hospital, especially the physicians, and unless they're assured that when they go to the hospital, there will be the necessary equipment and supplies to address their situation, they're not going to come to our local hospital. So again, I'm saying to those who are listening, those who are viewing, that the bulk of responsibility rests upon the shoulders of those who have investigative and oversight powers. Are you all listening to me? So that those persons are the ones, if they don't know about these things that I have shared this evening, then they're hearing it, you know, from persons who either view this program or listen to this program, so that they should conduct investigative hearings to find out why these things are happening and how they can take necessary action to stop that and to bring about a better situation. They are the ones who have oversight, authority, and responsibility, so that when the members of the governing board at the hospital and the CEO, CFO, whatever you have out there, when they appear before the legislature to defend their budgetary needs when it's budget time, that they can question those persons relative to what has transpired at the hospital, which is totally unacceptable, and to find out how these things can be addressed. And here is the other thing. Once monies have been allocated to provide services, supplies, etc., there must be a measure of accountability to make sure that the money is being used appropriately. And I want to just, because I take this thing seriously. And here is some things I found out about hospitals on the mainland, some steps they've taken to address their concerns, their shortcomings. And here is some stuff I found out that we could have done. And I looked at one particular case study on the mainland, small hospital about the same size like our hospital here. And here's what I found out. They implemented evidence-based practices. Because I don't want us to just simply put these matters out there without sharing with listeners and viewers some of what we found out that can be done, that should be done to better our situation. And as I pointed out, the legislature has a significant role to play. They got to exercise oversight. They have to have investigative hearings to find out what's going on. We've had demonstrations against what's happening at the hospital. And up to now, these guys have not convened sessions, committee meetings to look into those matters. But here is some of what I found out that this particular hospital on the mainland did. They implemented evidence-based practices. They introduced a real-time inventory tracking system. And I'm sharing that here with us, but I know these guys didn't listen to us. They know what these things refer to, and they can broaden upon what I'm saying here this evening. 3, they streamlined the network of medical supply vendors. They streamlined that, so that they didn't run into a situation where sometimes you got vendors who don't want to supply things to the hospital because they've not paid the debts in a timely fashion, etc. We've had situations where the hospital wanted to airlift patients to the mainland, and they had difficulty finding a hospital to accept the patients because certain hospitals wouldn't accept the patients coming from the VI because debts had not been paid. Okay, so in that particular case I'm referring, that case study I'm talking about, they went into streamlining the network of medical supply vendors. That resulted in minimized waste, improved procurement efficiency, and maintained high standards of patient care as a result of those steps that that particular hospital implemented. Another thing they did, they went into technology optimization in certain areas. Those areas included billing and coding. I'm not into healthcare. But since we were going to discuss this topic this evening, I took some time to do a bit of research. And I discovered these things, in particular with that case study that I looked at. So they optimize technology in areas such as billing and coding, predictive maintenance, staff scheduling solutions, fraud detection, financial risk management, which can predict and identify revenue leakage, high risk claims, or costly treatment patterns. Now, I'm not a senator. I'm a talk show host. I have served as a senator. But once those situations came up to my attention, I said, we're going to discuss that this evening. I didn't want to just simply put the problem out there without sharing with listeners and viewers some of what I have discovered that folks have done in other jurisdictions to deal with such or similar problems that they've encountered out there. And so I figured I'm going to share that with folks so that they can see what's happening. So that it's not a situation where we do not have best practices that have been implemented in other jurisdictions to contain those problems. We have best practices that we can look at. We have case studies that we can look at. And our senators have a responsibility to convene meetings whereby they can carry out investigation into why those things have happened at the hospital. Where are the cracks? Where are the drop holes where things fall through? And to recommend corrective action. They have the power to implement, to move legislation to address these things in a timely, and not just a timely fashion, but in a manner whereby you have benchmarks that have to be met, and you have some kind of performance evaluation in the process so that they can see if the steps they've taken, if those steps are being implemented appropriately, and if they're bearing fruit, bearing results. Again, I repeat, I'm not a senator. I'm a talk show host. But since we are going to discuss those matters, I took some time to do some research and to see how best we can address it. Let me hear you too.
They really gotta fix the lack of equipment situation. That's major. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yep.
They need to fix that. This is the last time I was in there was recently as last year.
Uh-huh.
And they take so long to come back and tell me, oh, we could discharge you, you don't need to stay.
Let me share this with, and Chalice, you know a little of that, but let me share this with viewers and listeners. During the COVID time, my wife had a crisis of sorts. So I called for an ambulance to take her to the hospital. She was taken to the hospital, but she was not admitted to the emergency room. And I repeat, that was the time of COVID. And
It was two incidents.
And my wife had COVID at the time.
And she has complications.
She has existing health concerns. She has hypertension. And so she went into a crisis situation. I called for an ambulance to take her to the hospital. When she got to the hospital, they did not admit her to the emergency room. She was kept outside beneath some stairs. They had her sitting out there. It so happens that that was an evening when there was a shooting on the island. And so a young man drove up to the emergency room with 2 gun victims in the back of his car. They were already presumably dead in the back of his car, the back seat of his car. And so he came out of the car ranting and raving and telling the personnel in there that he had his 2 friends in the back seat of the car, looking, that's if they're not already dead. So there was pandemonium, confusion, people running out to the car to check to see what was happening. And then my wife called me and told me, listen, I am sitting out here. They're talking about possibly putting the hospital under lockdown. And if I can come over to pick her up and take her home, because they've not attended to her. They never brought her into the emergency room. They just had her sitting outside beneath the stairs out there. And she didn't feel safe with what was happening. And so she asked me to come pick her up. So I went over to pick her up,
By the grace of God.
And we had to deal with whatever bush medication we knew how to prepare for her to take care of her. My mother-in-law found herself in a situation, and that was around the same COVID time. Am I right, Mandy?
Her first incident.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was during COVID
All right.
years.
They had to airlift her to the mainland. First of all, they gave her all kinds of crazy diagnoses. One time it
A
was it
gallbladder.
was a gallbladder. Another time it
Then she
was
went back again. I don't even know what they discharged her for. And then they came back to then notify that she had suffered a heart attack.
okay. But anyway, she was airlifted to the mainland. I forget the particulars, but I think she went to someplace in Miami. Am I right?
Tampa, I believe.
Anyway,
Yeah, somewhere around
she was airlifted to the mainland. She spent some time there, and then eventually they moved her to Jacksonville, and eventually she came back to St. Croix. She kept on having bouts of going to the hospital every now and again because of complications. A physician one time told my wife that her mother was receiving way too much medication. That wasn't good for her. And a physician confided to my wife and said that, more than likely you guys are going to lose her. It's just too much medication. And so eventually, they did cut back on some of the medication, but she was still having bouts where she had to report to the hospital. The lady fell in her house one day. She went to the bathroom, she fell. Her husband was the one who picked her up. She was taken to the hospital sometime in the morning, maybe around what, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning?
I guess somewhere around.
About 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, she was taken to the hospital. They kept her up till about 6 o'clock in the evening. She was discharged. Her husband was asked to come pick her up. The husband went to pick her up from the hospital. She died at about midnight that evening. She died. Passed away in her bed at about midnight that evening. I think it was when the husband got up to use the bathroom. He realized that she was unresponsive. She was dead. Gone. That lady, with all the complications she had, having taken a fall in the house, never should they have sent her home that evening. She should have been kept at the hospital for further observation. They sent her home at about 6 in the evening. By midnight that evening, she was dead. We've had the horror stories. I mean, it's the one hospital that we have on the island. And I want to see good for the hospital. And I know there are endless persons out there who have had similar experiences that they just don't come and air it out. So I found it necessary for us this evening to discuss that. And then it's just the three of us. I sure hope that, I wish that we had Anu and Disha with us, but they're not here, just the three of us. But I'm glad that we've gone into that I've been able to put some of this out there so that folks can know. And I didn't just come here, and I want to make it clear that I have nothing against the personnel who work at the hospital. My problem is management and operation of the hospital leave a lot to be desired. And we have persons in the territory who need to move post haste to address the shortcomings, the failures of the hospital. And I have to mention, who wants to get upset with me can get upset with me. But it so happens that I had not seen this editorial when we decided we were going to talk about the shortcomings, the failures of the hospital this evening.
Right.
And then this comes out where it speaks about the Bryan legacy. I'm not touching upon the governor and his legacy, where he might have failed or where he has come up short in terms of fulfilling his campaign proposals, planks. But this one just happens to fall right in line with what we set out to discuss this evening. And I want to say again, number 8, pick up the Daily News. Those of you guys who reside in the territory, and look at number 8 of the Bryan legacy, in the editorial. It says that he proposed to improve the quality of healthcare in the territory. And it goes on to say, in his words, in his platform, we must re-examine the business model of the hospital system in the territory and determine how to improve the quality of services offered. A comprehensive health needs analysis for the Virgin Islands must be conducted, and we should aspire to be known for excellence in the treatment of those ailments that are most prevalent in our community. The most prevalent, ladies and gentlemen, heart disease
Kidney issues.
and diabetes, kidney issues, most prevalent,
We got cancer issues.
and cancer, and
We
cancer.
can't forget the cancer.
Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, most prevalent, and we're not excelling as far as treatment in those areas are concerned. We're not even at a point where we can say that, there is something called medical tourism, where people go to an area because of the quality of healthcare that they got there. We can't even be a center for medical tourism
Like I
in
said,
the Caribbean
people
area.
who left home, they want to be home, but because of lack of physician specialists to deal with their case, they gotta reside on the mainland.
Hmm.
You know,
And
you
we
just
had
have to adjust to a new life. You didn't want that.
and we had a top heart specialist on the island of St. Croix,
No longer here.
Dr. Kendall Griffith, who's from St. Croix, a native of St. Croix. He was driven out of St. Croix. And we have many fine physicians on the mainland who are native Virgin Islanders, but we have not prepared the necessary quality of life issues and implements. We've not provided the kind of home that they would want to come.
Right.
Knocking doors, knocking everything down to come back home, We've not done that. I'm glad that we were able to get this off our chest. I know if Anu was here, we would have taken it to another height, but at least we did that. The other thing I said we were going to touch upon this evening, perhaps we won't even go there. We don't have time for it, so we'll just have to skip it until the next time. But do you have any closing thoughts, Shanice?
No, at the end of the day, the people who are in office aren't the right ones to make decisions because they aren't educated enough on the topic of medical. And, they just need people who know what goes on in the hospital on a day-to-day to make those decisions on how money should be spent.
But Shanice, hear me out. A senator doesn't have to be educated in the medical field to do well, to deliver a more reputable service to his or her people. Senators have staff, and staff can assist them with research. Staff and the senator himself or herself can reach out to persons situated at the hospital to find out from them. Like I said, they can convene hearings, meetings, whereby they can draw information from the people who work at the hospitals to find out what exactly are the shortcomings, where are the failures coming from, what is the source, and to work to remedy the situation.
They need to do a walkthrough. If there's any listening senator or anybody who's affiliated and working with any senator, push your senator to go and do a walkthrough at the Wang F. Louis Hospital, because it's ridiculous. And don't get me wrong, like Bapo mentioned, each time that I have been there, I have received great treatment from the nurses who dealt with me. So big up to those nurses who doing what they went to school for, to be a compassionate, caring person. Okay, but they need to do a walkthrough. Stop playing with the people of the Virgin Islands. Go and find out what is wrong in the hospital and fix it, please.
And none of the incidents we mentioned reflect or reflected badly on the nurses and other personnel. You know, the lack of equipment. Don't blame the physicians for that.
Mhm.
Don't blame the nurses for that. The lack of supplies. Do not blame the physician. Do not blame the nurses for that, or the security guards. You know, they the case where you don't have a specialist to attend to a newborn and having to bring somebody from St. Thomas.
Fly over.
You know,
Imagine this is
you
sad.
can't blame the rank and file staff at the hospital for that.
And another thing also is, on a good night, you would probably get through quicker and be dealt with. But on a busy night, oh, you're gonna have some problems. And if the ambulances come in, you getting pushed back. So yeah, they have a lack of physicians on the floor sometimes too. Like one dealing with so many people, it gets crazy.
Mhm. Yep.
I don't think a
Well,
walkthrough is good enough because if I walk through the hospital, what am I don't even know what I'm looking for. That's why they need boots on the ground, someone who is in that field who knows what to look for.
again, a walkthrough by senators is not a bad idea, but like I mentioned earlier on, the main thing, you've got to have meetings whereby you can conduct investigations in terms of the operations so that you can take corrective action. Um, you've got to exercise oversight in terms of the budget given to them and how the budget is being utilized. You've got to have performance benchmarks in place and all of these things. So again, senators need to get their act together. I'm going to tell it like it is. The senators have to get their act together. They have failed.
Hmm.
And I can speak that way because I have served as a senator. I know the process, I know the system, I know how these things are set up. And so, sorry, I got to tell it like it is. And as I said, elected officials have known who have had serious health complications. They chose to go off island for treatment, as do many Virgin Islanders. So we need to build trust and confidence in our hospital and healthcare facilities. Yes, before we close, Shanice, let's say you. Any word from you, Shanice, before we close?
No, that's it. We just have to cover this topic again to go further into detail to
All right.
see
I
what
hope
can be done.
maybe sometime when we have a new and Disha with us, when we have a full complement of people, then we can get into it. Mandy,
Just want to tell everybody, have a good weekend and same time next Friday. God's
all right.
willing.
And I want to say to all of you listening and viewing, blessings to you. Keep the Creator Most High first and foremost in your life, and do your best to be sympathetic, to be kind, to be considerate in your dealings with your fellow human beings. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Bye.
All right, and pray for everyone in the south of the mainland because we are about to exhibit one of
Oh
the
yes,
worst ice storms in history.
Oh
yeah. All right.
my. Hope
We'll
you
keep you
guys
guys
can
in
stay
prayer.
warm enough.
Yeah, yeah.